The most terrifying part about humans? They think they're normal, Doctor. Zathara had prepared for everything. She was the best alien expert on dangerous species in the entire Galaxy Council. Her 3 hearts beat steadily as she looked at the data files about Earth's humans. After studying 847 different alien races, she thought she knew what to expect. The humans seemed normal enough at first. When the big silver ships from space arrived at Earth, the humans reacted just like most other species did. They were curious but careful. Their leaders asked good questions. Their scientists wanted to learn new things. Their military forces watched closely but did not attack. Everything was going exactly as planned. Ambassador Krelton from the Hegemony Worlds was sharing stories with the human leaders. This was part of the cultural exchange program. Each species would tell stories about their greatest heroes and warriors. Krelton told amazing tales about soldiers who defeated entire armies using smart tactics and advanced weapons. These were the best of the best from his homeworld. He expected the humans to do the same thing. Every species had a few special individuals who were much better than the rest. These rare heroes were the ones who saved their people in times of great danger. But the human ambassador, Sarah Chen, did something different. She smiled in a way that made Krelton feel uncomfortable. Then she started telling stories about what she called ordinary people doing extraordinary things. She told them about a man named Witold Pilecki. This human had gotten himself arrested and sent to a prison camp on purpose. Not because he was forced to, but because he wanted to help organize the other prisoners to fight back. She talked about Irina Sendler, who saved children by hiding them in coffins and suitcases to get them to safety. Then she mentioned Stanislav Petrov, who stopped a nuclear war by refusing to report what looked like incoming missiles. These stories made no sense to Krelton. The actions described were impossible. No rational being would willingly enter a prison camp. No sane person would risk their life for strangers. No logical mind would ignore what appeared to be enemy attacks. But these must have been your greatest warriors, Krelton said, trying to understand. Your most elite fighters and leaders? Sarah Chen's smile got wider, which somehow made it more frightening. Oh no, she said. These were just regular people. Normal humans who happened to find themselves in unusual situations. Dr. Zathara felt all 3 of her hearts skip a beat at the same time. Something was very wrong here. The other alien representatives in the room began to shift nervously. They had heard similar stories from other human cities. In every case, the humans described impossible acts of courage and intelligence as if they were completely normal things that anyone might do. Ambassador Chen continued her stories. She told them about firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. She talked about teachers who spent their own money to buy supplies for their students. She mentioned doctors who worked for days without sleep during emergencies. She described parents who lifted cars off their children using nothing but determination. But surely these were special humans, said Dr. Vexhai, a crystal-based life form known for logical thinking. These must be the rare exceptions among your species. Chen looked confused by the question. No, these are just examples of what humans do. We have millions of stories like these. Every human community has people who act this way when the situation calls for it. The silence in the room was thick with fear. Every alien representative began to realize that they might have made a terrible mistake in making contact with Earth. Captain Sultar, a military officer from the Dominion worlds, pulled up some data files about human history. What he saw made his scales turn pale. Ambassador Chen, he said carefully, your historical records show that your species has survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and wars that should have ended all life on your planet. How did you manage this? Chen shrugged, which was a human gesture that the aliens were learning to fear. We adapted. We helped each other. We found solutions. That's what people do when things get difficult. The alien representatives looked at each other with growing terror. Adaptation was something that took thousands of years for most species. Cooperation during disasters was rare and usually limited to family groups. Finding solutions to impossible problems was something that happened maybe once in a species' entire history, but the humans talked about these things like they happened every day. Dr. Zathara began pulling up more data about human achievements. She found records of humans exploring dangerous places just to see what was there. She read about humans who spent years trying to solve problems that other species would have given up on immediately. She discovered that humans regularly risked their lives to save other species' animals, just because they thought it was the right thing to do. Most disturbing of all, she found that humans seemed to think that all of this was perfectly normal behavior. The meeting continued for several more hours. The aliens asked careful questions, trying to understand the true nature of humanity. The humans answered honestly, not realizing that every answer made them seem more terrifying to their visitors. By the end of the day, it was clear to every alien present that they had encountered something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans were not just another species to be catalogued and understood. They were something entirely different. As the alien ships prepared to leave Earth, Dr. Zathara sent an urgent message to the Galaxy Council headquarters. The message was short but contained information that would change galactic politics forever. First contact with Sol 3 humans complete, she wrote. Recommend immediate high-level review of contact protocols. Humans display behavioral patterns that fall outside all established parameters. They appear to lack normal fear responses and survival limitations. Most concerning, they seem unaware that their capabilities are unusual. She paused before adding the final line. Request permission to establish permanent monitoring station. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we decide how to proceed. The response came back within hours. Permission granted. Use extreme caution. Do not give humans reason to perceive us as a threat until we better understand their capabilities. As Dr. Zathara's ship moved to a safe distance from Earth, she watched the blue and green planet rotating slowly in space. Somewhere down there, 8 billion humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that they had just become the most feared species in the galaxy. The worst part was that they probably wouldn't understand why, even if someone told them. They would just smile that terrible human smile and say something about how everyone would act the same way in their situation. Dr. Zathara shuddered and began preparing her full report. The Galaxy Council needed to know exactly what kind of species they had just made contact with. More importantly, they needed to figure out how to deal with a race of beings who treated impossible situations as minor inconveniences and thought that heroic behavior was just what normal people did when circumstances required it. The humans thought they were normal. That might be the most terrifying thing Dr. Zathara had ever encountered in her long career studying dangerous species. The research station objective analysis floated in the darkness of space, far enough from Earth that the humans could not detect it. Inside the massive ship, teams of alien scientists worked around the clock trying to understand what they had discovered. Dr. Vexhai stared at the glowing displays in front of him. His crystal body flickered with patterns of confusion and fear. As a member of a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting logical thought, he should have been able to analyze any data set and draw reasonable conclusions. But human behavior made no sense at all. The problem is not just what they do, he announced to his research team. The problem is that they think what they do is normal. The other scientists gathered around his workstation, Dr. Zathara, Captain Sultar, and a dozen other experts from different species all wanted to hear his findings. Dr. Vexhai activated a holographic display that showed human historical records. Look at their military leaders, he said. According to our psychological profiles, every single one of their most celebrated commanders should have been locked up in mental hospitals. The evidence was overwhelming and disturbing. General Patton had moved entire armies across continents while somehow keeping them supplied with food, fuel, and ammunition. The logistics alone should have been impossible, but Patton had just assumed it would work out and somehow made it happen. Alexander the Great had conquered most of the known world before he turned 30, apparently believing that he was part god and therefore could not lose. Napoleon had convinced millions of people to follow him into a frozen wasteland to attack the largest country on their planet. And when these plans failed, Dr. Vexhai continued, the humans did not learn to be more careful. They studied what went wrong and then tried again with even more ambitious plans. Captain Sultar, a veteran of multiple galactic wars, pulled up files on human exploration and invention. This pattern appears in every area of human activity, he said. Look at their space program. The display showed human rockets from their early space age. The aliens watched in horror as humans strapped themselves to controlled explosions and launched themselves into space. When the rockets exploded and killed the crews, the humans investigated the problems, made changes, and sent more humans up in new rockets. They lost contact with several missions to their neighboring planet, Captain Sultar explained. Their response was to build better equipment and send more missions. They treat death as a learning experience. Dr. Meliana, a peaceful species known for careful planning, reviewed human scientific achievements. Their inventors and researchers show the same pattern, she said. The Wright brothers crashed hundreds of flying machines before they succeeded. Edison failed over 1,000 times before perfecting electric light. They treat massive failure as normal progress. But the most disturbing discovery came from Dr. Quintar, who had been studying human social behavior. They apply this same logic to helping others, she said. When they see problems, they do not calculate the odds of success or failure. They just start working on solutions. The display showed examples that made the alien researchers question their understanding of rational behavior. Humans had created organizations to fight diseases that had never been cured. They had built schools in war zones. They had developed technologies to clean polluted environments that other species would have simply abandoned. Most species help their own families, and maybe their local communities. Dr. Quintar explained. Humans regularly risk their lives for strangers. They donate money to help people they will never meet. They volunteer to solve problems in places they will never visit. The research team sat in stunned silence as they processed this information. Dr. Zethara activated another display. I have been analyzing their entertainment media, she said. Their stories reveal how they think about themselves and their capabilities. The screen showed examples of human movies, books, and television shows. The aliens watched scenes of humans fighting impossible odds and winning through determination and clever thinking. They saw stories of normal people becoming heroes when circumstances required it. At first I thought these were fantasies, Dr. Zethara said. Then I compared them to human historical records. Their fiction is actually less extreme than their reality. This revelation sent waves of fear through the research station. If human entertainment was based on real events, then the humans were even more dangerous than anyone had realized. Dr. Vexhai pulled up psychological profiles of individual humans. I have been trying to understand how their minds work, he said. Most species have built-in limitations that prevent them from taking excessive risks. Fear keeps individuals alive and helps species survive. The display showed brain scans and behavioral analysis from the cultural exchange meetings. Humans have the same fear responses that other species do, Dr. Vexhai continued. But they have developed the ability to override these responses when they think the situation requires it. This was perhaps the most terrifying discovery of all. Fear was nature's way of keeping intelligent beings alive. Every other species in the galaxy had learned to listen to their fear and avoid dangerous situations. Humans had learned to ignore their fear and walk into danger anyway. Captain Sultar stood up and began pacing around the room. We need to understand their military capabilities, he said. If they can override fear responses and ignore logical limitations, what are they capable of in actual combat? The research team began pulling up data about human warfare. What they found made them all wish they had never made contact with Earth. Human military history was a series of impossible victories and devastating defeats, followed by quick recoveries and new strategies. Humans had developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet, then created treaties to prevent their use. They had fought wars on every continent and in every environment their planet offered. Most disturbing was their approach to military technology. When humans encountered superior weapons, they did not surrender or retreat. They studied the weapons, figured out how they worked, and built better versions. They had turned farming tools into weapons, transportation vehicles into fighting machines, and communication devices into military advantages. They weaponize everything, Captain Sultar said with growing fear. Not because they are naturally violent, but because they refuse to accept that any problem cannot be solved. Dr. Meliana made another troubling discovery. Their peacekeeping efforts show the same patterns, she said. When they decide to stop conflicts, they commit completely to the solution. They send their own people into danger to protect strangers. They rebuild entire regions after wars end. The research team realized they were looking at a species that applied the same impossible determination to peace as they did to war. As the analysis continued, one fact became clear to all the researchers. Humans were not just dangerous because of what they could do. They were dangerous because they had no idea that what they did was unusual. Dr. Zethara prepared her preliminary report for the Galaxy Council. Recommend extreme caution in all future interactions with humans, she wrote. They possess capabilities that should not be possible at their level of technological development. More concerning, they are completely unaware that their behavior is extraordinary. She paused before adding the final recommendation. Under no circumstances should humans be made aware of their unusual capabilities. If they ever realize how unique they are compared to other species, the results could be unpredictable and potentially catastrophic for galactic stability. The message was sent using the fastest communication systems available. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. The humans of Earth had become the most important topic in galactic politics without even knowing it. The Galaxy Council meeting room had never seen such tension. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in emergency session to discuss the human situation. Admiral Kethmos from the Council Defense Forces stood at the center of the room, his forearms gesturing at the holographic display showing Earth. "We need to test them," he announced. "We need to understand exactly what humans are capable of before we make any long-term decisions about their place in galactic society." Dr. Zethara's research had convinced the Council that humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. But research data and actual performance were two different things. The Council needed real evidence of human capabilities under extreme conditions. "What kind of test do you propose?" asked High Arbiter Quanthek, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had led the Council for over 2,000 years. Admiral Kethmos activated a star map showing a distant system. "Kepler Station," he said. "A research facility with 2,147 scientists from 17 different species. It is currently under attack by the Devourers." A wave of fear moved through the assembly. The Devourers were a hive mind species that consumed everything in their path. They had never been defeated in open combat. When the Devourers attacked, the only rational response was evacuation. "The Devourer fleet numbers over 3,000 ships," Admiral Kethmos continued. "They will overrun the station within 72 hours. Every strategic analysis indicates that the station cannot be saved." Dr. Vexhai, who had joined the Council session via quantum communication, spoke from his research ship. "This scenario has historically proven effective at measuring a species' survival limitations. Most rational beings recognize when a situation is hopeless and focus on saving who they can." High Arbiter. Quanthek nodded slowly. "You propose to present this crisis to the humans and observe their response." "Exactly," Admiral Kethmos said. "This will show us whether humans are truly as unusual as Dr. Zethara's research suggests, or if they are simply another species that talks impressively, but acts rationally when faced with impossible odds." The Council voted unanimously to proceed with the test. Within hours, a diplomatic message was sent to Earth, informing human leadership about the crisis at Kepler Station and requesting their assistance with evacuation efforts. The response came back, faster than anyone expected. Fleet Admiral Torres of the Earth Defense Force requested an immediate video conference with the Galaxy Council leadership. When her image appeared on the communication screens, she was already wearing a military uniform and looked like she was preparing for action. "Council members," she said with a respectful nod, "we have reviewed the situation at Kepler Station."
"How long do we have?"
Admiral Kethmos felt his first flutter of concern. This was not the response he had expected. "Admiral Torres, the station will fall within 72 hours. The distance from Earth is 147 light-years. Even with your fastest ships, evacuation would be impossible." Admiral Torres leaned back in her chair and appeared to be calculating something. "Our ships can make the journey in 60 hours if we push them hard. That gives us 12 hours to prepare and 0 hours to work with once we arrive." She smiled, and Admiral Kethmos suddenly understood why Dr. Zethara had described human smiles as terrifying. "Admiral," High Arbiter Quanthek said carefully, "I believe there may be some confusion. This is not a rescue mission we are discussing. The mathematics make success impossible. The Devourers have never been defeated by forces of this size." Torres stood up and her smile got wider. "Honored Arbiter, with all due respect, you're thinking like prey. Humans don't run from things that want to eat us. We figure out how to eat them first." The silence in the council chamber was so complete that the ventilation systems seemed loud. Every alien representative felt their species' natural fear responses activating. They had just heard a human calmly announce plans to attack the most dangerous predator species in known space. Admiral Kethmos tried to maintain diplomatic protocol. Admiral Torres, the Devourer fleet consists of over 3,000 vessels. Your entire Earth Defense Force has fewer than 50 ships. The tactical situation is completely hopeless. Admiral Kethmos, Torres replied. Hopeless is a human specialty. We do our best work when everyone else thinks the situation is impossible. Dr. Zethara's voice came through the communication system from her research station. Admiral Torres, what exactly are you planning to do? Torres activated her own holographic display showing ship deployment patterns. We are going to save everyone at Kepler Station and send the Devourers back where they came from. Standard rescue operation. The word standard sent chills through every alien representative present. We will take 12 ships, Torres continued, along with some mining equipment and our new Project Sundial device. The plan is simple. We arrive, we assess the situation, and we solve the problem. Admiral Kethmos realized that the test was revealing far more about human psychology than anyone had anticipated. Admiral, you cannot simply solve a problem of this magnitude. The Devourers are bugs, Torres interrupted. Very big, very dangerous bugs that work together as a group. Every bug species has weaknesses. We just need to figure out what they are and exploit them. High Arbiter Quanthek tried one more time to make the humans understand the reality of their situation. Admiral Torres, the Council appreciates Earth's willingness to help, but we cannot allow you to sacrifice your people in a hopeless gesture. Perhaps Earth could assist with refugee processing instead. Torres looked confused by this suggestion. Honored Arbiter, there are almost 3,000 people at that station. They are counting on us to get them out alive. We do not abandon people who are counting on us. The communication ended with Admiral Torres promising to report back once the rescue operation was complete. The Council representatives sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Dr. Vexhi's voice broke the silence. They are actually going to attempt it, he said with what sounded like awe mixed with terror. They are going to attack a Devourer fleet with 12 ships and some mining equipment. Admiral Kethmos activated tracking systems to monitor the human fleet as it left Earth's solar system. We will observe from a safe distance, he announced. This will either prove that humans are as extraordinary as Dr. Zethara believes, or it will provide us with valuable data about their limitations. Captain Sultar, watching from another research vessel, made an observation that sent ice through the hearts of everyone listening. Notice that Admiral Torres never asked about the odds of success. She never requested additional support or resources. She never suggested alternative strategies. What does that mean? Asked High Arbiter Quanthek. It means, Captain Sultar replied, that she thinks rescuing 3,000 people from an impossible situation, using 12 ships and mining equipment is a reasonable Tuesday afternoon activity. As the human fleet accelerated toward Kepler Station, every major government in the galaxy began preparing for the possibility that their understanding of military strategy, physics, and rational behavior was about to be completely overturned by a species that thought impossible situations were just another day at the office. The most terrifying part was not that the humans might succeed. The most terrifying part was that they seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would think their plan was unusual. Captain Drakmor had seen combat across 17 different star systems. As commander of the Galaxy Council observation ship Silent Witness, he had documented battles involving the most advanced military forces in known space. Nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for what he was about to observe. The human fleet arrived at Kepler Station exactly 60 hours after leaving Earth, just as Admiral Torres had predicted. 12 ships looking impossibly small against the backdrop of space, filled with over 3,000 Devourer vessels. The research station floated in the center of the enemy fleet like a tiny island surrounded by hungry sharks. Humans are maintaining communication silence, reported Lieutenant Kexlar from the sensor station. They appear to be conducting some kind of preliminary scan of the battlefield. Captain Drakmor watched the tactical display with growing disbelief. The human ships were not taking defensive positions. They were not attempting to establish communication with the Devourers. They were not even trying to contact the research station to coordinate evacuation efforts. Instead, they were moving toward the asteroid belt at the edge of the system. What are they doing? Whispered Dr. Zethara, who was observing from her research vessel positioned safely behind the Council ship. The answer came within the hour. The human ships deployed their mining equipment and began systematically hollowing out asteroids. But these were not ordinary mining operations. The humans were creating something that made Captain Drakmore's military training scream warnings about impossible tactics. "They are turning the asteroids into kinetic weapons," he announced to his crew. "They are going to throw rocks at near light speed." This was not advanced military strategy. This was something primitive and crude that should not work against a technologically superior enemy. The Devourers had energy shields, advanced targeting systems, and weapons that could vaporize entire planets. The humans began launching their makeshift projectiles. Asteroids accelerated to incredible speeds came streaking through space like ancient slingshot stones. The Devourer fleet responded exactly as expected. Their defensive systems intercepted the incoming rocks with ease. "The human attack has failed," reported Lieutenant Kepler. "Devourer forces are adapting to the kinetic assault pattern." But then the humans did something that made Captain Drakmore question his understanding of physics, military tactics, and rational thought. They activated something they called Project Sundial. The device was clearly based on planet-cracking technology, weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. But the humans were not using it as a weapon. Instead, they had somehow converted it into the largest electromagnetic pulse generator Captain Drakmore had ever seen. The pulse swept across the Devourer fleet like an invisible wave. Every ship went dark for several seconds. When their systems came back online, something fundamental had changed. The hive-mind connection was broken. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Zethara over the communication channel. "The Devourer's collective consciousness is what makes them so dangerous. Individual Devourer ships are confused and disoriented without the hive-mind guidance." Captain Drakmore watched in fascination as the Devourer fleet began to break apart. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination moments before were now bumping into each other and firing randomly in all directions. But what happened next made Captain Drakmore seriously consider retiring from military service. The human ships began boarding the Devourer vessels, not with overwhelming numbers, not with superior firepower. 12 human ships, each carrying maybe 30 crew members, were attempting to capture enemy vessels that were 10 times larger and filled with hostile alien life forms. "This is suicide," Captain Drakmore muttered, but he could not look away from the tactical display. The first human boarding party attached themselves to a Devourer ship using what appeared to be modified construction equipment. They cut through the hull with tools that looked like they belonged in a repair shop, rather than a military operation. "Human boarding team has breached enemy hull section 7, reported Lieutenant Kepler. They are actually inside the ship." What followed violated every principle of space combat that Captain Drakmore had learned during his 50 years of military service. The humans moved through the Devourer ship like they owned it. They seemed to have an intuitive understanding of alien technology that should have taken years of study to acquire. "How are they controlling the ship systems?" Dr. Zethara asked over the communication link. The answer became clear as Captain Drakmore watched the tactical display. The humans were not trying to understand Devourer technology. They were reprogramming it. Somehow, using nothing but portable computers and an apparently infinite capacity for creative problem-solving, they were turning the Devourer's own ships against them. The first captured Devourer vessel turned its weapons on its former fleetmates. Then the second. Then the third. "Humans have captured 12 enemy ships in the first hour," Lieutenant Kepler reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "Captured vessels are now providing fire support for additional boarding operations." Captain Drakmore activated his communication system. "Human fleet, this is Captain Drakmore of the Galaxy Council observation vessel. Please respond." The reply came from Admiral Torres herself. She sounded slightly out of breath but completely calm. "Captain Drakmore, this is Admiral Torres. We are a little busy right now, but we wanted to thank you for keeping an eye on things. This operation is proceeding normally." "Normally?" Captain Drakmore could not keep the shock out of his voice. "Admiral, you are capturing enemy ships with hand tools and portable computers." "Well, yes," Torres replied. "The Devourers build good ships, but their computer security is terrible. Once we figured out their basic programming language, the rest was just standard technical work." Standard technical work. Captain Drakmore filed that phrase away as something that would probably give him nightmares for years to come. The battle, if it could even be called a battle, continued for 6 more hours. The humans captured 47 Devourer ships, disabled hundreds more, and somehow convinced the remaining Devourer fleet that retreat was the better part of valor. When the shooting stopped, the humans began the most impossible part of their impossible operation. They rescued all 2,847 research station personnel in perfect safety. Human casualty report, Admiral Torres announced over the general communication channel. 14 wounded, none killed. All station personnel evacuated successfully. We are preparing to return captured vessels to Galaxy Council custody. Captain Drakmore stared at his tactical display in complete silence. According to every military manual he had ever read, what he had just witnessed was impossible. The humans had defeated a vastly superior force using improvised tactics, primitive weapons, and what appeared to be pure determination. But the most disturbing part was Admiral Torres's final transmission. Standard Tuesday operation complete. Recommend we pack more sandwiches next time. Torres out. Standard Tuesday operation. Captain Drakmore began preparing his report for Galaxy Council headquarters. Somewhere in that report, he would have to explain how 12 human ships had accomplished what the combined fleets of dozens of worlds had never managed to do. He would have to describe how humans had turned mining equipment into weapons, planet-killing devices into communication jammers, and enemy ships into allies. Most importantly, he would have to convey the most terrifying fact of all. The humans genuinely believed that what they had done was completely normal. As Captain Drakmore dictated his report, one thought kept running through his mind. If humans considered defeating impossible odds and rescuing thousands of people from certain death to be a standard Tuesday operation, what would they consider to be a difficult challenge? He was not sure the galaxy was ready to find out. High Arbiter Quanthek had called emergency sessions of the Galaxy Council before, but never like this. Representatives from 847 different worlds had dropped everything to attend this meeting. The great assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as beings from across the galaxy tried to process what they had all witnessed. At Kepler Station, the holographic displays showed footage from the battle that had ended just 3 days earlier. Ships from dozens of different species had arrived to observe what everyone now called the Kepler incident. Every where major government in known space had sent their best military analysts to study human combat capabilities. All of them had reached the same conclusion. Everything they thought they knew about warfare, physics, and rational behavior needed to be reconsidered. High Arbiter Quanthek stood before the assembly, her ancient voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Fellow council members, she began, we have encountered something unprecedented in our recorded history. The humans of Sol 3 have demonstrated capabilities that our best scientists insist should be impossible. Dr. Zethara stepped forward to present her final analysis. The research team had worked around the clock since the battle ended, trying to understand how 12 human ships had accomplished what thousands of council vessels had never managed to do. Honored representatives, she said, after extensive study, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of humanity. Every species in our database exhibits predictable behavioral patterns. They have rational fear responses. They calculate risk before taking action. They recognize when situations are impossible and act accordingly. The display behind her showed comparative analysis charts, brain scan data, and behavioral models from hundreds of different species. All the data supported the same disturbing conclusion. Humans appear to lack these normal limitations entirely. Dr. Zethara continued. When faced with impossible odds, they do not retreat, they innovate. When confronted with superior technology, they do not surrender. They adapt it to serve their purposes. When presented with certain death, they do not despair. They plan contingencies. A wave of fearful murmurs swept through the assembly. Several representatives from prey species had already filed requests to increase their home defense budgets. But the most terrifying aspect of human psychology, Dr. Zethara said, is that they genuinely believe this behavior is normal. When we express amazement at their achievements, they seem confused. When we call them heroes, they insist they are just doing what anyone would do in their situation. Ambassador Krelton from the Hegemony Worlds stood to address the assembly. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. Dr. Zethara, are you saying that humans are naturally a warrior species? That they are inherently aggressive or militaristic? Dr. Zethara looked at her data one more time before answering. Her response would echo through galactic history for centuries to come. No, Ambassador Krelton. That is what makes them truly terrifying. They are not warriors. They are not conquerors. According to our cultural analysis, they are gardeners and teachers and engineers and artists who just happen to treat physics-defying feats of impossible heroism as Tuesday afternoon activities. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to pause as every being present tried to process the implications of what they had just heard. Captain Sultar from the Dominion Defense Forces activated another display. The humans' military performance at Kepler Station violated every principle of strategic thinking, he said. They used mining equipment as weapons. They converted planet-killing devices into communication tools. They captured enemy ships with hand tools and laptop computers. The display showed detailed analysis of human tactics during the battle. Military experts from across the galaxy had studied every move, trying to understand how such primitive methods had proven so effective. Most disturbing of all, Captain Sultar continued, is that their after-action report describes the entire operation as routine. Admiral Torres recommended packing more sandwiches for future missions of similar scope. Dr. Vexhai, speaking from his crystal form, added his psychological analysis. Humans do not recognize the concept of impossible, he said. When we tell them something cannot be done, they assume we mean it has not been done yet. They treat every limitation as a challenge to be overcome, rather than a boundary to be respected. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans approached every problem with the assumption that a solution existed and that they would find it eventually. They treated catastrophic failure as valuable learning experience. They volunteered for dangerous missions to help strangers they would never meet. High Arbiter Quanthek raised her hand for silence. Dr. Zethara, what do you recommend? How should the Galaxy Council proceed with human relations? Dr. Zethara looked around the chamber at hundreds of representatives from species that had never encountered anything like humanity. I recommend, she said slowly, that we never, under any circumstances, give them reason to think we pose a threat to something they care about. The weight of this recommendation settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Every being present understood the implications. Humans would protect things they cared about with the same impossible determination they had shown at Kepler Station. Because the most terrifying part about humans, Dr. Zethara continued, is not their capabilities. It is that they think they are normal, which means they have no idea how powerful they actually are. She paused to let this sink in before delivering her final observation. If they ever figure out how unique they are compared to the rest of us, if they ever realize that their behavior is extraordinary rather than ordinary, the results could reshape the entire galaxy. High Arbiter Quanthek nodded gravely. What specific actions do you recommend? Make them our allies, Dr. Zethara said immediately. Give them a seat on the council. Include them in our decision-making processes. And quietly begin updating all our strategic planning to assume that impossible things become merely improbable when humans are involved. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, an invitation was sent to Earth offering humanity full membership in the Galaxy Council, along with voting rights, trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs. The human response came back the next day. President Martinez of Earth thanked the Council for the invitation and accepted on behalf of humanity. She mentioned that Earth was looking forward to contributing to galactic peace and prosperity. Then she added a line that made every council member break out in cold sweats. We are excited to help solve some of the galaxy's more challenging problems. Humans do our best work when everyone else thinks the situation is hopeless. As the council session ended, representatives from hundreds of worlds quietly began updating their defense plans, not to protect themselves from humans, but to ensure that humans never had reason to consider them a threat. The Galaxy Council had learned a valuable lesson at Kepler Station. When dealing with a species that treated impossible situations as minor inconveniences, the safest approach was to make sure you were always on their side. After all, as the humans themselves would say, it was better to be safe than sorry. And if there was one thing the entire galaxy now understood, it was that when humans said they were going to solve a problem, they meant it. Even if the solution required rewriting the laws of physics, military strategy, and common sense to make it work. The most terrifying part about humans was not that they were dangerous. The most terrifying part was that they were dangerous and did not realize it. They would continue treating impossible achievements as normal behavior. which meant the galaxy would never know what they might accomplish next. For the first time in galactic history, an entire civilization had achieved peace through the simple expedient of making sure they never gave their new human allies anything to fix. It was, everyone agreed, a much safer approach than finding out what humans considered to be a really difficult challenge.